Hi, this is Bob. Today's 10-minute tour will be on accounts payable. This is part 2. And so we're going to go into AP vendors and we'll dig into each of these a little farther. So I'm going to do a list here and we'll find one. I think we talked about Fastenal on the prior one, so let's bring up Fastenal. You can tell, like Fastenal alone, we have a whole mess of them because each Fastenal bills us separate for their location. So we'll get, 19 different statements from Fastenal, and maybe more than that. Oh yeah, it goes on. So, like I said, on my prior video, make sure you save some room. Okay, so go in here. The first thing I'm going to say is to come up with a standard of what you do. So Fastenal is pretty easy. It's FAS. But we have another company, say EA Decker. Now, does that go under EAD or DEC? So you make up a rule for your company that you can go by consistently. We have some that begin with numbers for some reason. Matter of fact, I think if we go in... of course not. That's not going to be that easy, is it? There we go. So some of these begin with numbers. So you can see we actually do use the numbers. But 21ST1 and 21ST2 blows my 3 letters and 2 numbers theory. So we've had problems before where a new accounts payable person comes in and doesn't follow the rules. But generally, we use that same rule all the way through. The second thing I'll say for consistency is caps or lowercase. You'll see most of our stuff is all done in caps. And I guess the reason we do that is because it fits through everything. Sometimes it's hard to know what should be capitalized and what shouldn't be capitalized. You can't say just the first letters capitalized. IBM, for example. So we've made it pretty much a rule to capitalize everything as far as these names go and so on. So come up with that. The third thing is the amount of information you're going to get and how hard you're going to dig for it. So a lot of this stuff you can get right off of a vendor's statement or invoice. But they might not have a fax number. They may not have emails. So what's your rule going to be for that if they don't have one? Should your AP vendor call the company and say, I need to get a contact name and an email address and an extension if there's an extension for that individual? Who are you using for contact 1 and contact 2? Is it accounts payable contacts or in their case receivables? Or is it a sales rep, or is it the company president or owner? Sometimes it's going to be all in one for small companies, but bigger companies are going to have different things. So try and come up with some consistent rules for this stuff. Next is the account number. Wherever you can, try and find that on the statement and use that here. I'm not positive if it feeds automatically to our checks or not, but I think there's a way to force it to it. Some of it, we've been using Timberline for forever. Well, we've been using Sage 300 CRE forever, back when it used to be Timberline. And back then, they didn't even have an account number or customer account field. They didn't have an inactive box. So a lot of this stuff has changed over time. So we've been putting these customer account numbers here. I can't swear where they get used, but my general rule is if we can put this information here, put it here, and if we can use it down the road, it's there to use. It's a lot easier to have everybody have an account number in there than it is to 8 months from now decide we have to do it, and now we've got to contact every vendor. So generally do that. Okay, these vendor types. Summary is a summary vendor. If you're not familiar with them, it's usually a non-1099 vendor. It's for the guy that comes to your door selling tickets for the Kiwanis, chicken barbecue, or a COD delivery from, some printing shop that you just bought a sign from or something small. They're normally going to be under $600. Overall, you don't ever expect to have to track them, etc. Credit cards are kind of new, so I'm going to click on that and see if I can get some information. Select credit card to set up a credit card issuer. Okay, so US Bank or Chase. If you've already set up your bank or credit card issuer as a different type of vendor, you can either set it up again as a credit card vendor or change the vendor type to credit card on the existing vendor. Once you've created a credit card for this vendor, you cannot change the vendor type again. And so you can use credit card management if your accounting method's accrual. If your accounting method is cash or cash and accrual, then there's some separate rules on how to do credit cards. We don't track credit cards through the system yet. It's something I actually planned on learning when I was down at the Timberline Tug conference that just recently got canceled. So postponed, I guess I should say. So I do want to learn it. Okay, so where these get set up is, I think I've got to close out of this to get to it, is in Common Tasks, Company Settings, Custom Descriptions. And so you go down in this list alphabetical till you get to AP, and there's where you set them up. So you can change those names to anything you want. And the reason you use these is in Accounts Payable, AP Settings, okay, one of these uses them. Distribution settings. Okay, so down in here is where these get used, and so this tells your system what pieces of information to ask for down at the distribution level as you're entering an invoice. So a subcontractor is going to need to know about, you're going to have to look for retainage information. You don't need to look for retainage from other types. An equipment supplier is going to look for equipment cost info. You don't need that from anybody else. A lot of them are very similar, like most are going to ask for commitments, job cost information, units, etc. A subcontractor might look for owner requisition because it's paid when paid. So you can tie that owner's requisition to trigger a payment from your system to that subcontractor that got paid for that requisition that's tied to the owner's requisition that got paid. A lot of wording there. So at any rate, you can select all these based on what type of vendors they're going to be. Now, if you find two that are exactly the same, you don't obviously need to differentiate between them. If you don't have the equipment module, you probably wouldn't need to have an equipment type. So maybe you could change it to legal or something like that you'd want to track better. Oops. So that's where those come into play. And that's about everything for the front page of this vendor setup screen. Oh, Inactive. I'll go through that really quick. We're running a little long here, but Inactive will take the invoice or the vendor off of a list. It doesn't really delete the information. Everything's still there. So if you go into an inquiry, so we'll shoot down here fast. Oops. Vendor register. One of the things you'll see in here is a condition. And it's probably going to be on my other screen. Darn it. Come on. Yep. So, in this condition, inactive not equal to X. So it's going to drop any vendor on this list that is inactive. So that's where it comes into play more, is showing vendors that are active only. So if you know you're never going to use a vendor again, you would just make them inactive rather than deleting them. All right, so that's it. I'm really running long on this one, but that's it for today's 10-minute tour. We'll carry on with the other tabs of accounts payable on our next one. See you later. Bye now.